Well, my name is MD Islam. The research project is concurrency controlling distributed database system. The table of content of this research paper: introduction, motivation, concurrency control. In concurrency control, there are two parts. One is methodology, and that is synchronization technique. After that, conclusion and references. Introduction. As in the research paper, two definitions come from first definition, distributed database, and second definition, concurrency control. So what is distributed database? A distributed database is a database in which segment of the database will be stored on various computers in a network. Distributed database behave as a virtual database that periodically synchronize the distant database to make sure all they deliver consistent data. The principal objective of distributed database management system is to control the management of distributed database. Second, concurrency control is an important part of database management system. Nowadays, in database management system usually uses concurrency control for multiple user concepts. There are some problems such as backup, recovery, preserving, and ensure the correct termination of concurrent operation, preventing concurrent running data for each user, transaction using the same data at the same time. Example of concurrency control anomalies. So what is anomalies? When more than one transaction is working concurrently, the same target can read information from a database and manipulate other transactions as well. Compared to mutual exclusion problem. This problem first introduced in 1963. After that, solved by Isher W. Disoptron, 1965. The mutual exclusion problem is concerned with I-device, storage, CPU. The problem of database concurrency control problem is similar to the mutual exclusion problem. By example, we clarify a little bit more. If there are two processes trying to update the same bank account, it must take turns, and if each process with the concurrent balance or current balance from the database update it, then write it back, one of the update will be lost from God. In concurrency control, there are some motivation such as data communication, cost and recovery, database recovery, data sharing, distribution and autonomy of business unit, increased reliability and availability, faster response, improved performance, data integration, data coordination, recoverable failed node, and parallel transaction. A formal module for transaction processing. Introductory definition and DDBMS architecture. Basically, DDBMS is able to contain 4 parts such as TM, DM, transaction and data. So what is TM and what is DM? TM is transaction manager, DM is data manager. And each 4 parts communicate with each other synchronizingly, such as transaction communicate with TM, TM communicate with DM, DM communicate with data. Data manager process read message and write message for the purpose of concurrency control mechanism. A read message is requested by transaction manager to interpret the data and store it as a data manager DM after it is laid as a local. Centralized transaction processing model. centralized transaction processing model is an advanced infrastructure where maintained software and associated database reside as a central site is called treasurer. A centralized DBMS contains two process models at one side such as TM and DM executing. On other side, T occurs by begin, read, write and end operation. Each operation is communicated via the algorithm or via the method. By that method is started, begin, read, write, end operation. Distributed transaction processing model. A distributed transaction processing model is a database model where it owns four properties that lead the consistency and dependability of distributed database. Those are called together ACID properties such as atomicity, consistency, isolation and durability. So what is atomicity? The transaction is regarded as a unit of the process and it passes all the alarming messages that all proceedings are finished or none of them is wrong. Consistency is the main part of distributed database. Accuracy or correctness of a transaction and the transaction of an accurate program that plan on consistent database into memory. Isolation. Each transaction should ensure a consistent database or at all the time and therefore no other transaction can modify or interpret the information that is being sent by another transaction. Durability guarantees that once a transaction is committed, that output is permanent and it will never delete from the database, and whatever happen like abort, crash and soon after pulling, it will be committed without modifying or undone. Concurrency control. In concurrency control, there are two parts. One is methodology, another is synchronization technique. So firstly, I'm discussing methodology. In methodology, there are some parts such as serializability and consistency, equivalence, serializability, theorem of serializability, serializability of logical transaction, and so many things. So firstly, serializability and consistency. Serializable provides serial history which makes histories to be equivalent. In addition, notion of consistency justifies the choosing of serializability, correctness of criteria. Equivalence. To define a serializable history, two equivalent histories should be equal and produce same final state for each transaction. For explicit equivalent concept need initial state and output state equals where input and output of item result is distinct. In mathematical term look like this, where pH1 equal to pH2. Serializability. Serializability is the classical concurrency schema where it can ensure the sequence of data transaction. A schedule of transaction is to be correct if they are serialized or linear. Otherwise, they may contain your information. Theorem of serializability. For validation, serializability theorem is a must need because of it make the appropriate practical solution for equivalent. In terms of practical compatibility of equivalence serializability called precedence relation, which is similar to serialization curve. Serializability of logical transaction. A logical transaction might contain number of physical copies of data, and that stored in the database where all copies of data might at different size. So we can easily tell transaction in is greater order where transaction actually affect in the database system. Concurrency control. Synchronization technique. Synchronization technique. In synchronization technique, there is some method or some algorithm, such as distributed two-phase locking, one-wide timestamp ordering, distributed optimistic, synchronization transaction within a class, centralized concurrency control. Distributed two-phase locking. Two-phase locking is the basic concurrency control protocol in distributed database management system, and it guarantees the serializability. Two-phase lock is a correct synchronization when it is played along a cyclic order. The primary goal of this protocol is read n cases and write also. Wound wide. This is the second algorithm in this protocol, which moves on the same glide path of two-phase locking, is slightly different from two-field, where it first maintains wait for information then checking for local and global deadlock. Deadlock is preventing using timestamp in this algorithm. Timestamp ordering. In database management system, timestamp ordering is a unique identifier that identifies the transaction. Broadly speaking, timestamp values are determined to recognize the transaction which is submitted the argument, so timestamp can be taught as a particular transaction is at time. Distributed optimistic. The optimistic concurrency control protocol is a fourth algorithm in distributed database. During commit protocol, it calls an operation and the exchange certificate information. In this algorithm, read timestamp and write timestamp are maintained. Synchronization transaction within a class. Class is a phenomenon or blueprint of an object value. If any synchronization transaction is executed within a class might be executed in timestamp order and make ensure that serializability. Class pipeline will adequate to guarantee that the transaction within a single class. Centralized concurrency control. Earlier we discussed wait and die and wound wide. On that point are some unnecessary process restart in that step that involved in concurrency control in a given site, where they doesn't know what occurred in the other side, and selecting wait made restart cause of deadlock. Conclusion of this research paper. Many organizations are building a distributed database for ensuring confidentiality, integrity, dependability, and accessibility of information in all forms. Distributed database is immediately available in the marketplace, but there are a number of methods that need to be worked out satisfactorily. The principal goal of distributed concurrency control is distributed serializability for several database systems. Two-phase locking and other locking protocol is much more cost efficient, prevent the deadlock, serializability, high security transaction, recovery, and also commitment other ordering in the distributed environment. On the other hand, the rest of technique also good for avoiding deadlock entirely, serializability, concurrency control, perform low latency network, and efficient implement of a total ordering, participate atomic commit protocol, global serializability, and so on. And here is the references we put. Thanks